May is Mental Health Month. Canadian Mental Health Association observing the month as Mental Health Month, and a lot of Canadians feeling the financial effects of the trade war, tariffs, we've got layoffs, and there's a new report that finds financial stress is a top contributor to anxiety and to burnout in the workplace. And anxiety is a valid condition for disability benefits in Canada, and other mental health conditions can also be considered as well. Nainesh Kotak is founder of Kotak Personal Injury Law, and I spoke with him about your rights. As we look at this being Mental Health Month from the Canadian Mental Health Association, a lot of people feeling stress, financial stress, stress at home, things like that. A lot of people have benefits at work, but don't know really if they can claim how do things work. Where's this kind of legal minefield here for us?
Right. So, yes, a lot of people do have a group plan through work that would provide for short-term and long-term disability benefits, or sometimes one or the other. So many people don't realize that, look, they can claim for mental health conditions as well if it disables them from performing the essential tasks of their own occupation, and later on the definition may change to whether or not they can perform any gainful occupation. Now, to do this, there's a number of forms that need to be submitted. The first is what's called an employee statement, and that is where, as the employee, you set out what's going on in your life, the anxiety, and how it's affecting you. It's very sort of the personal, subjective questions. There's an employer statement. Essentially, that's factual. What were you making? What was the last day of your work? How long you've been there? Probably the most important form is the physician statement. Now, the physician statement, you would either get a specialist if you're seeing a psychiatrist, or your family doctor if you haven't got to that stage of a specialist yet. And they need to list all the symptoms, the medications you're taking. What's very important is not just the diagnosis, but also they need to list how it affects your ability to work. So it's important that your doctor knows what your job entails. So does it require concentration? If it's a physical injury, certainly does it require lifting and repetitive movements. But if it's a sedentary job that you can't do because, for example, if you're depressed and you're anxious, they need to list your restrictions and the treatment plan that will be going forward. So that essentially is the process of how to apply for a short-term or a long-term disability claim if you have any illness, but we're talking about mental illness today, in which we see clients for the most part, and I would say most of my clients who have been denied long-term disability have some form of mental illness, whether it's anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, or borderline personality disorder. These cases we see all the time, and they get denied a lot.
A lot of people with anxiety would think that wouldn't qualify for benefits, because they think, well, that's not maybe a legitimate diagnosis. What is the ruling there?
Yeah, so, and this boils down to the stigma, I think, that we in society still have attached to depression, to anxiety, to mental illness in general. Often, unfortunately, we feel the sense of, weakness if I report this. And I would strongly encourage that, look, if you are suffering and it's taking its toll on you, anxiety or depression or other forms of mental illness, please report it to your doctor because they can help, right? They can set up, whether it be cognitive behavioral therapy, whether it's medication. So that's the first line is to go to your doctor. So I think, there is there's really a lack of reporting of mental illness symptoms because of the continuous stigma that we have. Now, things are improving in that regard. We see celebrities coming forward, and we have the mental health months that we're seeing. There's, Bell Let's Talk is obviously very, very helpful in bringing to light some of the struggles that people who suffer from mental illness go through. So things are changing, but we're still not there yet. So you're absolutely correct that people don't think they can make a claim that they can, and to do that, these symptoms need to be reported to physicians.
So the big part is, having a diagnosis, having something on paper, having that, right, to show that you have been seeking treatment?
Yes. One of the requirements in most disability policies, long-term disability in particular, is that you undertake the usual course of treatment that is designed for the particular illness that you have. And it is with respect to mental illness that we see a lot of problems with that because, one of the I guess the symptoms of mental illness is in fact the non-reporting. You're just depressed. You don't feel like talking about it, right? So it's a bit of a hurdle to get through. But yes, absolutely, people should follow. Go to the physician and follow as best you can the course of action that the physician has asked you to do, because that can give rise to denials if you're not seeking the usual course of treatment. We've overcome that readily by arguing that this is one of the facets of the illness. But again, I would encourage, absolutely report the impairments and follow the appropriate treatment to avoid denials.
So if you're being told, that this doesn't qualify, that you can't have these benefits, what would be your first step to take?
Right. So insurance companies, they usually would use a term that there's insufficient medical evidence. And that's a catch-all phrase that says, hey, we don't accept it, we don't believe in type of thing, right? So, and sometimes they'll say you're not getting the right treatment, or we think you can do something else, but usually they use the phrase insufficient medical evidence. They will give their internal appeal process to you an option. So they'll say, well, you've got 30 days, send us some documents. And our experience with this, unfortunately, has been, it's like the person in one cubicle judging the person in the other cubicle's decision. They tend not to override their own decisions in that internal appeal process. What we find is more useful is to look, when you sue the insurance company, it takes it out of the hand of the case managers that were dealing with it. It goes to one of their lawyers, and it goes to a litigation specialist, and then the insured person, the person who has a disability, doesn't have to deal with them directly anymore, and a lawyer is dealing with it. But the important part is then, the lawyer needs to move that case fast, because, you're not working, so that case needs to move quickly. A lawsuit needs to go very fast, and then you enter into negotiations with the insurance company once you produce medical evidence, better medical evidence in support of the case. So that's the approach we take, and we've been quite successful with it.
Very good. Anything else you could tell our listeners that, would help them through getting some help here?
Yeah, I think, a couple of key points here. One is really try to, if you can overcome that stigma, once you report it once and you sort of, pour your conditions out, pour your soul out to your doctor, it becomes easier because you've got an ally. And it's important to make your doctor an ally, get them to understand certainly what you're going through. A couple other pointers, social media. Often insurance companies will look at your social media and they take it out of context. But people don't tend to post sad things. They're not going to post them in a room alone in the dark or crying. They're going to post, okay, I went to the beach, I went out here, and smiling. But that may not be indicative of their everyday life, right? So be careful with social media. I always recommend to our clients, just make them private, right? Because it can be misinterpreted to what you. So that's, another thing that I would say. Reporting symptoms, watch out for your social media is key. And follow the treatment of your doctors. Keep a journal if that would help you. Talk to friends about it, and to get assistance. Counselors, use your get a counselor through your employment assistance program. Often these can be paid for through your employment benefits. So these sort of tips that I would like to give people. But most importantly, you're not in this alone. If you are stuck, if you get a denied claim, then turn to a disability lawyer to help you out.
Thanks so much for all this advice. Great stuff.
Thank you so much. Appreciate being on.
That is Nainesh Kotak, founder of the Kotak Personal Injury Law.